The first module we'll discuss, the first built-in module, is the OS module, as we alluded to. And this is a standard library module. And what I mean by standard library modules is one of the built-in modules. It's installed with Python. We just have to import to use it, import in our code. So it's a standard library module that provides a portable way to use operating system specific functionalities. So there's a few key attributes I want to highlight and a few key functions. These are perhaps some of the more common things. As we saw in our introduction when we looked at the OS module on the Python documentation, there is a lot to this. So I'm just going to cover a few things, but feel free to dive in as much as you'd like. The more you want to learn about it, the more you'll know about it as you take that time and effort to study. So, but these things should get you up and running. So the OS name attribute will output the name of the operating system. POSIX will be Windows. That's just how it's defined. os.environ is a dictionary of the environment variables. And key functions: get current working directory, return the current working directory, list-dir, list files and directories in the given directory, make-dir or mukdir, create a directory, remove or delete a file, rmdir, remove or deletes an empty directory, os.path.join, we could join one or more path components such as a desktop / and then we could join a file name to that. It's working with file paths. It helps make that a little bit easier. And then OS path exists. That will check if a path exists. We have an example here of a code snippet. If the data directory exists, then create it. If it does not exist, then create it. If not, OS path exists data, then make dir data. So that would be for the current working directory. And one note here, you might be wondering, well, how do I create a file? Can OS create a file? Well, the best way to create a file is using the open method in Python, which we've talked about in this course. So where we do a with open file as my file, file.write or my file.write, that things like that. That's going to be the easiest way to create a file. So and write to a file. But yeah, lots of cool things here with the OS module. So let's take a look here at some of the things we can do with it in practice. All right, we are over here in Windows again. I think most of you are on Windows machines, so I wanted to show you here. But the practices are going to be very similar on a Mac or on Linux. So I've got VS Code opened up. I've got the folder My Scripts, which is right here. This PC desktop My Scripts with a few files in it. I've also got that open up in command prompt. And what I wanted to show you was a few of the functionalities of the OS module. So here in VS Code, there's a couple ways we could do this. I've got VS Code open up in the terminal. That's essentially the same thing as our command prompt. I don't know that I've talked about that with you in the course yet, but we can just open up a terminal there. We could run Python like this, just Python, and then we can run Python commands. Or we could do the same in our command prompt. Just type Python and that will run the Python executable. So if we do that, either way, what we need to do is import OS. And if I've got a Python file open as well, here we've got a new script. I'm just going to make a new one, os ops.py. We import at the top, import OS. Again, these are installed with Python. We just have to tell Python we want to use them in our script. So then it will load everything up from the OS module. And then what we could do, and I'm showing you this in the command prompt, is because I want to show you a lot of different methods quickly. So I don't want to run the file every time I show you something different. So what we can do is just type, let's see what os.name gives us, NT. So Windows NT, I guess that's just the way that it's defined on Windows to output NT. os.environ. So these are some attributes. These are all of our environment variables. We could then start looking at some functions. os.get current working directory. That prints out the directory where we are at as a string. And we see this is Windows format. os.list dir to list the files and directories here. If we just run that, it does it for the current directory. So we see we have my text, new script, os ops test. These are all the files that we have in this directory. We could also specify the string. So we could just copy this here. And that would do the same thing for us. See, the same thing. We could also put a raw string in here, which is one way that I've talked about that I think is a nice way of doing things. So we can just use a single slash instead of escaping each one of those backslashes. So several different ways of doing that, but we've listed the contents of each directory. We could even do a simple for loop. Let's look over in VS Code. Let's say for file in os.list dir. Let's just do this for our current working directory. Print file name and then file. So let's run that. So we see we just print file name and then our file name, so we can easily interact with these objects here in that list. We could make a directory. Let's go back over here. os.makedir new folder 1. There's our new folder 1 that just appeared. So we're manipulating the operating system mechanisms via Python, as opposed to right-click, new folder. We're just having Python do all that under the hood. os.remove. We can input the path here. So this will delete a file. os.remove test.py. Now that's gone. Where that was there, now it's gone. Let me do that again in case you didn't see that. os.removed my text.txt. That one's now gone too. So with that said, we need to be very careful because Python, as we know, is extremely powerful. We could very easily delete important files and folders unintentionally. So we need to be very careful when we have this much power, such as when we're using the OS module. We need to be very careful about how we use this so we don't accidentally do something wrong. Let's see, we could remove a directory. os.rmdir and then our path. We can just say new folder 1. That will get rid of our new folder 1. Okay, that's gone now. I want to show you, let's make another dir. Let's just say for this folder, we'll call it data. We're making a directory. Now I want to remove it again, but I want to use the current path. Let's do this over here actually in our OS ops. So let's say if os.path.exists data. So if there's a data folder, then let's delete it. Under data. Let's try that. See, we deleted it right there. Let's create it again. Make sure data. And another thing we could do is we could say, let's put a path variable up here. Path equals raw string. I'm going to copy our path here. And I just like to use these raw strings and get rid of our double backslashes. So what we could do is, I just want to join this path together with data. We could say, so path, and we could say data path equals os.path.join path, and then data. Let's see what that looks like. I'm going to comment this out for a minute. And let's print data path. See what that looks like. So that has printed out this for us. So we see it just added data to our path. It added this slash here. See, after my scripts, it added that, and then it added data. So os.path.join can just join path components. And we could actually add more here, I believe. Let's say data 1, data 2. Let's run that. See, it's adding these path components together. So it just makes it a little bit easier for us to join paths. So then what we could do is, let's comment this out and say if os.path exists, data path, then armdir data path. So let's run that. Let's see. Whoops. It doesn't exist, so it didn't do anything because I've got these extra paths here. There we go. That's how we wanted it to be. So we'll delete this data file. There we go. So that's deleted. And I think that's a solid intro for you on the OS module. And lots of things we can do with it, but very powerful stuff.